Although it is recorded that there was a hyper foreign that has been spying on us and what we think and say about black peoples and white survivors, where and how it knew, it assigned other and roles with other, communicated for black peoples, white survivors for the color black, therefore, for why and how we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time, projected to us by the theater as nature's body itself, which is distinct from other natures of theater. The names of the people of the sciences. That's a phrase from from the Bible, for example. The names of the people of the sciences and the theaters. They pretend passions and emotions to care about things, but they are collusions preventing all mandated law offensively and being and having been shown they need to pretend other to so self-valuing roles with fact treatments with cases as collusions. People, WFSB, forced me to fake conversations with themselves. They have roles with the World Trade Center attack in New York and people with Washington, D.C. involved, with people all along Route 175 from America's founding locations. They're involved with all kinds of natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake motivations with it, etc. And at the same time, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, these are WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others about the World Trade Center attack. They will not communicate with me. They want me to communicate with them digitally. They already put me in fake digital, changed digital evidences. They already put fake and changed phone conversations with the police and totally fake conversations with police that I had conversations with as a kid and now as an adult too, and different ones as a kid. And distinctly they did that. I went to the police station. I had one word with the police there. They stole a sentence I said to my friend, also tied to a bunch of people with the name tomorrow. And Mendes that forced checked Turner and persuaded them to collusions with them in a whole bunch of different countries, like people from Korea, people from Italy, people from the bordering countries. At the same time, there are families that have been here since before our founders were born. Russia and America and China had here and there. Our countries forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded already before America's founders were born. Countries A through Z were already systems, tax, military, from how we are human species body of individual bodies and all group differences demonstrating what's generating them. For the other species bodies too as its own. Oh, in other words. So I'm pretty sure it was Usher. In other words, I was jogging on the track at Trinity College. Former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, is involved before and after the World Trade Center attack with a bunch of people at Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University. Central Connecticut State University is in the Britain, Connecticut, and the houses next to it have connections between themselves. And one of the things that connects them is their roles with intelligence families that used to live near me, and how they came back and when they came back, and in other words, and their roles with ongoing predicate acts with facts, with the extended family members of the house/S still involved, with more then and now, with proven child abusers, leaders of the kids, but more involved then and now. And so, in other words, increasingly they have roles with the intelligence community and with the elements of, the being themselves. But while they're all these different cultures and cultures, but through the breaching method, they show them how to communicate for difference and show them they need to hide that and show they need to hide it to calm. The kids, it shows it too, and the adults sickly distinctly. I only know a pro and family. They'll confess to you if they lie about it. There, it's recorded other ways. A Perone family and a Kerr family. They sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They're involved with all kinds of natures of criminally foreign influence, investigators already, judges and prosecutors, people along roads and routes and town lines. Different ground distinctions involved with them with the math, evidence appreciation, worse than war crimes. At countries A through Z, forgiveness is for this because there's worse involved. But to discern that, we have to look where everyone's guilty at the same time, enforcing roles. Otherwise, that body is sensed and their syntax is adapted to Black pupils. And they use nature too. Criminal insidiousness, psychopath natures of calmness, and natures of aggression as the people who speak and have spoken for the law and for our founders purge and urge, because what our real American history is James Madison's plan. And that was to counter-extort and force the rest of the founders, the rest of the presidents, and the citizens counter-extorted, forced to become, and hyper additionally, the Native American citizens, who are also our founders. See President/Chief. In that hyper Native and Native American part that's simultaneously greater than and more finite than that, just as the value is to achieve, because it represents the tribe. Because only an individual could defend the order of the finite, for example. But no matter how powerful a leader gets, as long as they're being forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, some ways by the locations, areas, and states, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded themselves to entertain like their narratives, postures of integrity, natures of debate behind that, regarding syntax speculation with markets, with uses of words like value, as systems tactical terror from natures, that is showing us that values have relativity to positive and negative, the ways we know, and negative and identity has relativity to positive and negative the way we know, but also simultaneously further as a quality of diffusion that is a special difference. And as it appreciated through its system here, positive not as criminal and citizen's nature, or as it forced from here as its complete value, but left as only positive as criminal and citizen's nature. So not capable of correlation / hypercorrelation. Not capable of appreciating properly how there are 3 parts of time. We are being and have been shown bound. Like the value of seasons too. Even if they never make it here, they are increasingly valued to us. Where how it is showing us its body, the identity of value / value progression, that is showing us completely different species bodies of individual bodies with group differences too, generated by that same thing. Its body, the hyper invisible but still discernible, the parts of speech of English of other languages. The ancients appreciated this being about the hyper invisible, but the invisible but still discernible / hyper invisible but still discernible. This is more probable and is more practical to theorize, let alone to convict Black people. So in other words, we can change the world the way it wants. And as long as we're trying and checking the way it wants, the right way, in other words, even if we mess up, just the process of trying to check too. It keeps showing us how to make evolution's fruits, gifts, and means out of nowhere, including some ways especially, and or differentially especially, where we are fact-cheating nature, have a means. See, where there are negotiations and where the experts are supposed to, what they're supposed to be experts on, they're trying to make experts on, like, speak about war maps and things like that. They're supposed to be saying, look, nuclear weapons, we know, countries A through Z, we now hunger through systems that are totally only natural as criminal and citizen's nature. A human fact-cheating nature breaching method forced that. But when people say they know that, they're simultaneously trying to defend descriptions of American history and uses of our founders' words, leaving out what they declassified about that. leaving about how they didn't have free speech then. Everyone had to hide their motivations because there was going to be investigations, investigators of everything. They could only counter to an extent. That's why they had to leave slavery entrenched. For example, it's not even debatable. If someone wants to debate it, they'll have demonstrations of the same thing. But that's gotten away with relative to how they've been switching names, forging names into branch. Hartford courts and their family members, in the Britain courts and their family members, at the same time with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, a whole bunch of different countries. They've been spying. When I say spying, they're using those truths they could learn about people. In other words, to where and how they lock names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, news, and names next to the news, and their sources, and the interbranch names, and the names of their different positions like judge, prosecutor, victims advocate, time collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists. That's time collusion with terrorists, WFSB. Connecticut's Channel 3 News attached me to fake conversations with them and with others about the World Trade Center attack. And they forced Saudis to collusions with that. And with police at Wethersfield Police Department attached me to fake conversations with them as a kid and then as an adult. They also had to pretend to the news that I spoke with them as a kid too. They did that with they have more people with the positions with the schools and with their filming and their syntax regarding such stories and other natures of stories. Increasingly, there are family members too of security guards involved with the shopping centers and how they're leaking and forcing me to speak about how they have roles with shopping centers and malls and town lines in these locations and corners of streets. They brought this up. The F.B.I, the courts, and police forms have people with corners of streets, like on Church Street in Wethersfield. Same people tied to proven child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart. Also involved at the corner of South Highway and Town Line Drive. Also with interbranch, individually grouped and together predicate acts with facts methods with a whole bunch of other people. Intercities tied to that, for example. And their rules with the people on Valley Crest Street and Morgan Circle. Increasingly involved with the police, with predicate acts with them, in overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and child abuse leaders of kids years apart, and the kids involved and the adults trying to put fake ties and fake natures of ties to other kids with foreign and domestic medical at the same time, putting fake transcripts in databases, change things on campuses, filmed 24/7, like Trinity College, a Joshua Stryker. A bunch of people came to my street to make confessions about Joshua Stryker's roles with their confessions about the corner of the and people with the F.B.I. and Wethersfield Police, their communications. And these are people that don't even know me. They were influenced to plant evidences, fake sides of issues. There were people that made it look like they were fighting with each other, so they could have other people put fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, and a part of whatever they did there. People with the Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, they have roles along all Route 175 years ago with a Mike Roberts and Eric Jensen. Also with conjunctions to that, like the Berlin Turnpike with state police and interstate state police family at the same time with the FBI and the courts and overt criminal enterprises and private ones and their neighbors involved with this and the family members of probate court judges involved with elderly homes and with hospitals, mental health care force locations where people yell and things like that. They force their mental evaluations. Those campuses are putting fake transcripts in there as collusions with the crime scenes where people would have yelled long ago and cleared things up. And these people have all kinds of delusions with readings of principles too, like American history. Supposed to understand clear as day. Nature itself shows us that our founders did not have free speech. The nature of debate contains quality aspects of nature that are criminally foreign influence and facilitated there by the breaching method that showed everyone so far how to interpret our founders' communications, even though it was declassified. That's why, even though I was able to read that, that's why I don't even know have that book, and they don't have all the research or is it research? Everyone's using that research to fake motivations. James Madison, his plan before he was a principal, before he was a president. Our founders, plural, were before the presidents. They were distinct from the presidents, and they asked to be communicated to as James Madison, his plan. That's what they went and got George Washington to help them with and to use the plan of them with president/chief representing Native Americans, because nature itself forces that. And so the Constitution unabridged forces it because it forces everyone to free speech too. But we all have tactically denatured below our feet. It's the only reason that's even gotten away with pretended other, even the suburbs. That's why how even it's not even debatable at the cities. It's gotten away with by hiding behind everyone fighting with each other, making convictions about each other. See that how they're playing games with the phrase due process. In other words, and where they have it mixed foreign and domestic, there are differences when they speak about things like jobs and all these crimes. Sandy Hook has a prison there involved with people out of the state corrections offices, out of the state judicial branch offices, increasingly involved with people with wire crime acts and methods and roles on my street and intercities and intra-cities tied to them. And the police made confessions over the phone through the years. And then just waiting, hiding, plotting, and lying about the value of the time. And then hiding the need to hide more and more, how they're stacking more and more faked and changed records of what happens. And the difference of their guilt, the fire departments, they're making the fire departments. They refuse to identify themselves legitimately. They might have, there's what's his name? They might have gassed him out, the fire department, because they have roles with the FBI too. And I don't know the Bose family. There's a Charlie Bose that is involved with a bunch of people on the state judicial branch offices. I don't know if it's tied to Boseberg and his family. I don't even know their names. They know my name. And they're involved with people next to Fox Connecticut News, involved with Mendez police and people on Two Route Highway and conjunctions to it that are increasingly involved with predicate acts with facts between and at the campuses and with names next to them. And increasingly out of the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices with people with the World Trade Center attack roles, with the news locations and their sources from Connecticut, interstates. Washington, D.C. has adults and kids involved with my 2 speech class teachers I had and other classes I had. They're increasingly stacking roles. They're timing where I was going to be and who I was going to see, in other words. And the reason they make waves so you're not going to go on and talk, because they have criminal enterprises about people make confessions. Then those people are going to pretend they know you. They're putting also from off campuses is recorded. This is part of the child abuse method. You guys are not letting tell because it's recorded from off the campuses. They're changing and faking everyone's records. So when people go back and there's that quality of fact checking nature forced as criminal insidiousness, they get away with, putting fake ties and fake natures of ties to people. And I never tried to contact Ray Reynolds in my life. Increasingly, people next to a campus that used to be on Valley Crest in Wethersfield, and names conjunctive to it, have been also collusion with names next to all the other campuses I went to, those same ones. Involved also with a teacher there with the name Harris, increasingly planting predicate acts with facts against me. Also with the Leahy family that faked conversations with me to others through the mail and with my family. They'll tell you this. But they changed and faked what my family said about this to the police. And when they use the exceptions, I forced people to call. I told people I'm going to go very violent if you don't call police. I'm not going to tell you why. Just call the police. And they wouldn't do it. I said, hey, and I'm violent to make them do it because there are murders involved with this intercity that are connected and tortured too. Hartford Hospital had rules with the World Trade Center attackers per worse. That also has complete possession over Saudi's defense of its identity. America's identity. A through Z, you guys have been systems tactical ulterior from the human species body of individual bodies, and not generating all difference, and not capable of speaking properly or appreciating properly the difference of the Constitution unabridged and why and how we have rights are too numerous to list. And let alone while the republic is possessed, still criminally still force self-valid roles, so it can be discerned if it starts changing with the republic criminally re-engineered, tactically delusions raw, and the campus Marcia system, same thing, and the pantheism function replaced or placed. Pantheism is not about many gods. That's because this preaching method set everyone up incapable of discerning what pantheism is about, how it is functional, how there is a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible by pupils. I'll see the whites of eyes. In other words, so we're going to discern. Please learn. Boxing, I wanted to keep it too long. Nobody's watching. Nobody's here. It's all prepared. Hyper invisible but still discernible is what we are discerning. Where and how we are discerning why we are appreciating more than one name for a verb, and where and how they are manifest the way they are individually grouped and together. Black pupils. Your ancient courses return. But A through Z all stands a bridge. In other words, with pantheism, we could have it too, like the entertainment side of it. We can make hyper positives out of negatives. There's something wrong when suburbs that were designed for torture, extortion, and slavery, and our founders communicated how they would change and make what they said. See, this preaching method made everyone collusions with itself. That's why get them on paper, one name and sequence, because a whole bunch of other countries and criminal enterprises and sick people with predicate acts, and from other areas putting fake to pretending passions, emotions on my street. I don't even know other names, and from the other areas with the people involved with it, and with their doctors. On a mass scale, they have people run in to locations with databases and act on both sides of issues or at crime scenes. And it's not legitimately how they're doing this on a mass scale. There are only three branches of government, clearer than day how they are kept them. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, self-valid roles per function of by the breaching method. A lot of things that people learn is taught to them by the breaching method that has our founders' communications replaced. And they call that principle. Black pupils, whites of eyes are principle. James Menace's plan, why and how our founders, plural, want us and need to us to understand them, plural, behind him and his plan. Because then was George Washington was extorted and counter-extorted with everyone. They all counter-extorted each other, including James Madison. He didn't have free speech even as the president. We're supposed to understand that and communicate about how that was declassified. They have other replaced. There were self-valid roles stayed with pretending they didn't realize, too, that our founders' words were being used leaving out what was actually entrenched and how they were forced to, because they were fact cheated, they were tortured, extorted, and enslaved. See how ever since the World Trade Center was used to pretend we wanted torture, and even if they voted and said they want torture, they were lied to, including since they were little kids. Increasingly, people involved with former mayors from Wethersfield sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm collusions between themselves with the people involved with the Saudi attackers named Demoro and Cololo and O'Brien and Kerr and people with the state judicial branch offices, people involved with victims of the World Trade Center attack too, involved with that, and with the body dumping spots, involved with the Enzo Fienzo confessions, and his roles with the Dillon family, increasingly involved in planting evidence on all sides of my houses and all sides of their houses, roles with other countries too, and courts. New Britain Superior Court has more involved with some Mendez brothers, police brothers, with sexual and medical offenders of the kids, and digital police of the campuses involved with it too, and foreign countries involved with differences rackets, putting fake things in databases at the interbranch locations and building on that. And these are people that are acting on all sides. They're fighting with each other as groups and making it look like people are about to make look fake ties. In other words, thus they have behavior racketeering worse than war crimes. In other words, so make sure we get them on paper, one name and sequence. Where's the Kevin Corone and Mark Corone live? In other words, they have some people in my area involved with some sexual medical offenders of kids, and they have some violence. They now, in other words, in the past. But I don't know what involved. They had some. They said it had something, but that was like an accident, and then it was normal. We don't know each other. We ever saw them on the inside of schools. The only school I ever saw them on the inside of was at Central Connecticut State University, and I didn't even make it more complicated because already I knew that they placed them there. There's recorded proofs that they placed them there to cover up what their roles, having planted evidences with people with a former Mayor Gold and other mayors involved with Wethersfield, Millwoods Park, and the side entrances to it, involved with the F.B.I. and the courts, and all along conjunction, like Route 3, which is a conjunction to the state judicial branch offices, are people that have been planting evidences at databases, predicate acts with fax rolls, whole wire crime acts and methods, where they even put fake phone transcripts, and then, acting tied to that. There are only three branches of government. They are showing how they need to, hide how their names were used remotely, increasingly incapable of affording any finite detail. In other words, they're putting me with all kinds of fake ties, fake natures, and ties, people I don't know at all. And the other people I know, they put fake ties. I only know them trying to put fake ties to me as the ones involved. The rest of the people in my schools will tell you this. In fact, all of them probably. When it comes down to the people that are pretending passions and emotions, these are the people with the intelligence at the same time with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, roles of DACA, etc. They can't speak with the name of the people, the sciences, that country's A through Z about integrity. So they have to self-value collusion /S with communications racketeering worse than war crimes, with all natures of instances at each age and nature of campus. They self-value bad things happen so they could look better compared to it. As collusion /S because the breaching method is involved with it. Clearer than day. That's why they have the hate groups right on Facebook and the counters to them. Time collusions with sequences, planting evidences with the courts, the Britain Superior Court, Harper Courts. Time collusions grouped with the criminal enterprises and co-defendants of former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, and their lawyer, people next to their lawyer's office, other natures of conjunctions to it, all kinds of scams with Social Security people and other things that they've been just charging on top of that, under the guise of being about real medicine and healthcare. That was as a part of what uses them remotely, criminally foreign influence with the Russians, Ukraine, other countries in the news. They have roles with families from Harvard Hospital's campus of, Institute of Living on the campus of Harvard Hospital since 1822, involved with criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, or readings of American history, replacing James Madison's communications to us, our founders' communications to us, their use of James Madison's plan. They have it replaced at the founding locations, like at Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. They still have it more. They have more sensibilities, motivations, nature, narratives regarding it, the change there. And they're, in other words, harder to discern, but other ways easier to discern. It's wrong. They have James Madison's plan replaced. James Madison's plans were forced counter extortion there, and why they had to leave slavery entrenched, northern colonies and southern colonies. But why and how George Washington was able to come to Hartford, Connecticut, Wethersfield, Connecticut, and was able to have the might to be able to counter extort and to force means to win the last battle of the Revolutionary War, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. That was through James Madison's plan and the founders behind him. That there are proofs that nature itself shows us too that there was Native American help there too. In other words, even if it wasn't formal, everyone was all only colonists. But see how they put president/chief. It's not just only colonists that way. And there are other ways too. George Washington alone couldn't counter those internationally entrenched force things, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists. In other words, international companies, all roles and layers with the breaching method since before modern relations, religious messengers were born. This ancient republic was already criminally re-engineered. We must restore. We must be led by the hyper-invisible but still discernible, that true all ways, not leaving out the smallest finite detail, not leaving out questions asked for itself, for anything besides its way with questions, because that's what brings answers proper. Why do we have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time? Why do we have eyes differently from the rest of the species bodies? Why do other species bodies have eyes the same, just like our species body does? We're shown what is generating all differences, what is generating all similarity. We are shown its body to an extent, and where we are shown that to an extent, we are shown variably. We are shown it simultaneously, its complete identity relation to itself, the only increasing value of that constantly. Black pupils. But each class has stood abridged and needed other things, others or selves blame, and shown to blame the kids, the parents, the other teachers, the things actually problems, but exactly the way the breaching method, because the breaching method employed nature's demonstrations with negative value nature progressions, acts, natures that are simultaneously also in demonstration of itself. The breaching method. It shows everyone how they need to hide that because they need to hide for other reasons. So no one ever got to discern it. It's more probable that the devil I learned about not from reading about it, but from through nature we learn about the devil. We hear it in the art and stuff like that. The nature of religion teaches us about the devil and about a shaitan. But there are proofs that we should call it a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. and we should make ACE Act, an anti-hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise act. I'm not a lawyer, thank God. We could use as the hyper-evidential how lawyers are recorded involved with all kinds of scams, including ones at campuses, involved with all kinds of wire and mail crime methods. And everyone, when they're people who aren't doctors are using medical terms like for the mind, sickly, distinctly criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions wrought from the doctors of the mind, involved with all kinds of natures of organized crimes and all kinds of relative delusions, and roles replacing those founding principles of America in James Madison's plan, and about their roles preventing honesty about the extortion of George Washington. No, even our first president, let alone our founders before them, the presidents, black people, the chiefs.